Welcome to Willing to Win. Embrace or ignore when change hits. It feels like walking point to point through time. Walking from then to now without ever experiencing the time in between. And you're left asking yourself, when did this happen? Like the time I woke up aboard a transcontinental flight with a sudden appreciation for the fact that I'd flown across the Atlantic while I slept. All the time it took, all the intelligence and focus and effort, all the resources necessary to make an overnight trip across the Atlantic something that people do every day and really don't think much about. It's like reading the news to learn that a group of everyday people has become the first group of everyday astronauts to successfully visit the stars and return home. And realizing that you're witnessing the ushering in of a new era of commercial spaceflight and a bold new chapter in the history of humanity. These are the moments in which we surrender living in one reality and start living in another. Wedding days, childbirth, first hellos, last goodbyes. The days that host tragedy and triumph, and all the ones that come in between share one thing. They bore witness to a new reality. It's the difference between December 7th, 1941 and December 8th. It's the difference between November 22nd, 1963 and November 23rd. It's the difference between September 11th, 2001 and September 12th. On each of these days, the world awoke to one reality and started the next in a new one. We coped with these unfathomable events by gathering around and supporting one another. We survived as tribes survive together. But what happens when change doesn't affect everyone all at once? What happens when change impacts a single family? A single person? That's where the Willing to Win Legion comes in. We help one another build deeper levels of empathy for others who might be suffering from future shock and without help will suffer in silence, feeling progressively disconnected in a world that threatens to rewrite reality in the blink of an eye. The Willing to Win Legion is here to help because the future starts now if you're willing to win. If you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Hi everybody, welcome to Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas Getman. Thank you for being a part of our ongoing mission to help you be a part of the Legion, a community that's all about how we can take charge of our futures and really not feel that everything is happening so quickly around us that we just have to react, but we can be part of a constructive conversation to move it forward for good in our life. And that's where Jeff comes in to talk about how experience is everything in some respects, especially for the younger generations we're finding.
You know, I tell you, and this is, I can't believe how fast this all goes. We're already at the end of our, mini season 3 talking about change. We examined it as a concept. We then went through and we talked about it, in terms of environmental change and the things we can do to be more aware and to respond to the environment as it changes. Last week or last episode, we talked about, information overload and how much information we're all getting all the time and the need to sort of process that and make a commitment to being a lifelong learner, or you're going to be left behind. This episode, we really are trying to focus on how the experiences in our life are changing all the time. In fact, the experience that is our life is so fundamentally different, than when I grew up with the rotary phone and then the big technology came and we had push button.
That's true.
We're going to go from there. Can't get any better than that. So, it certainly has done some progress, since that time. But a lot of the times when you look at this, what we realize is there are changes that sort of happen, overnight, and then there are changes that happen little by little. The thing that's really different about change right now is we're getting a lot of overnight changes, big things that affect everyone, while simultaneously a lot of little changes that are happening little by little all the time, and then more quickly and more quickly until it's just change all the time. For example, I was talking to my aunt and I was saying, well, I'll just send you a package, send it via Amazon, buy it at Amazon and send it to me. And she's like, oh, I don't I don't have that. I don't use that newfangled thing. It blew my mind that somebody doesn't have, doesn't have.
Speaking from someone who has an Amazon box arriving at your doorstep daily.
Every day. I mean, it's like a little treat that comes to my door every day. So I love that. And then, it's to the point where I don't remember, the last time I was at the grocery store, right? Because there's now grocery delivery if you have a place that can pick the good stuff and not send you bruised fruit, and stuff like that.
Right.
But, I think even more practically, you could see the progression is, we had 4 channels growing up, right? Had one of those antennas that always seem to be broken, and you had to get in your front room and you touch the antenna and move your leg to try to get the UHF channels to come in. Well, that progressed to cable TV, and we thought we had it going on, right? 500 channels, 300 channels, whatever it was. That was sort of the pinnacle, but that soon gave away to streaming, and it wasn't a matter of more, it was a matter of custom, right? Like everything is custom. So I was at an event the other night where I was talking to people, and we were talking about how we were consuming something on cable that everybody had, all the services had, but they offered it in different ways, without a voiceover, categorized or just live, and how everybody was picking the format they wanted to consume it. So that was another completely, different experience. And then ultimately, which I think is the biggest twist for me, is one of my kids seems like he's really super smart. And I don't know as a dad if it's just me, thinking about that's my boy, right?
Right.
Or if it's true. And so I wanted to understand, where was he getting all these facts? I mean, at 11 years old, he was talking about the impact of the Russian Revolution. I wasn't talking about that at 11 years old, but then he showed me how to use YouTube TV, and there's all these great ways to learn in really short frames. And I do want to give a plug to my very favorite YouTube short. If you haven't watched Oversimplified and you're a history fan, you owe it to yourself to spend a few minutes to check that out. It's a great way to learn, and it's a great way for kids to learn a whole bunch of things, outside the classroom that can really sort of fill the blanks between what can be dry lectures, right? And so that's really where it all comes from. It's just experience is really changing, and I know you've done some research on how it's changing in work too.
It's amazing, because when we think about how what you just described, the sort of evolution of our desire to have kind of that American dream, it used to be many times for our parents like the accumulation of stuff, right? How if you had the 2 cars or even 1 car initially, or if you got cable TV, or in my case, I remember my parents saying, "We have a surprise for you." And I said, "We're getting a microwave." And they said, "No, you're going to have a baby sister." Okay, well, everyone wants the microwave, and so it was amazing how, you're right, those moments in time sort of are etched, and it often would revolve around some material thing that your family was getting or that you could acquire because you worked so hard and saved the money. Well, now we know young people, that generation of millennials, they are growing up in a world where they realize the value of experience has usurped stuff, okay? And you've talked about this before. It's a great statistic that they're growing up, or a fact that the largest retail store that they know, Amazon, doesn't own any items. Mm-hmm. The biggest transportation service doesn't own any vehicles. We're talking about Uber. And the most popular hotel chain doesn't truly have or possess in its inventory actual hotels, Airbnb. It's shared spaces that others own. So millennials feel that, why would I pay and deal with all the costs of having a vehicle if someone else can just drive me around and I can save all the hassle involved? And that is the difference of a generational shift. Statistically speaking, they are taking on perhaps more in terms of the collective good, however, when 84% of millennials believe that they need to change the world for the better. And I can't say that when I was starting out in my career, I had that same sort of global enlightenment to care about the collective outcome of the people that I, lived and worked with, and those on the other side of the planet.
It's so interesting you say that, because, there are 4 or 5, books and articles that sort of just captivated me and sort of put us in the spot, the reason I've sort of dedicated my career to it. One of them was back in the late 90s. And I remember getting the Harvard Business Review and thinking, oh, that's what smart people read, right? So I get this Harvard Business Review, and on the cover, it said, "Welcome to the Experience Economy." And it was an article by Pine and Gilmore. And it's obviously, impressed upon
Made
me
an
because
impression,
years and
yes.
years later I still remember it. But they talked about how in the future people would be less likely to buy things and more likely to buy or desire experiences. And we see that all the time. You can buy tickets to the concert, for X price or for 5X. You can go meet, the band and hang out with them for a weekend in Jamaica or whatever. Right? They're just all about
Exactly.
these experiences, and people really get that. But I will tell you something, that when we're talking about change and how it's coming, to our lives and stuff, it can be dismissed. And I just want to make sure people realize that I think we're to the point now where it's sort of like a multiple choice question when you talk to people about change, right? And the choices are, and I'll do it at home, I'll ask you the question. You have 4 choices when you can describe change in your life or how you view change. Is it a real problem that's going to affect people and organizations to varying degrees? That's A. Or is it B, something so big and so important that it will eventually affect and demand the attention of every man, woman, and child on this planet? Or C, is it just the latest buzzword used by gurus to sell books and attract followers? I take offense to that last one, even though I wrote it. And then number 4, is it all of the above? What do you think?
I'm guessing based on our conversations, our willing to win collective audience, it's D, all of the above.
Yeah, it is absolutely. I mean, certainly you've got those folks that are going to go out and try to cash in on something who may not even understand the concepts we're dealing with, but they can use the words in a sentence, and so they're a guru for a day or something, and they go out and try to cash in on it. But the reality is that change is going to affect all of our lives, every one of our lives in our organizations, to varying degrees. But at certain points, it will be something that is so dominant and so important that we cannot, deny it. So the real question is, are you going to treat change in your own life and in your community like Y2K or like COVID, right? Is it something that
Great
is
example.
less than it should have, could have been big, much to do about nothing, or something bigger than we ever imagined?
And it's interesting you say that, because in some ways, since we maybe feel like Y2K, for those of us who experienced it, and what Jeff's talking about is when we went from 1999 to 2000, when the year was actually coming up on us, there was this implication that all the computer systems were going to crash and no one was prepared, and it was going to shut down our economy. And when we saw that in the end, it was more of a boy cried wolf scenario, perhaps that made us cynics and jaded us a bit to really truly anticipate the change that not just did come, but is still ongoing with COVID.
Absolutely. And when we come back from break, we are going to party like it's 1999 all over again. But before we do, I just want to have one special warning. You were talking about getting a baby sister or a microwave. If you get a baby sister and you have a microwave, do not put your baby sister in the microwave. Words to live by from Willing to Win.
Great disclaimer. We'll be right back.
Willing to Win is produced by Lyft Productions. Guests on the program are not compensated, nor is their appearance representative of the Willing to Win views. Willing to Win does not necessarily endorse any people, products, or services.
Willing to Win.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas Ketman. We're glad you're staying with us as we talk about how experience is everything.
Yeah, I tell you, I had a great experience at the Super Bowl last week. Thank you so much for letting us come to your Super Bowl party.
Absolutely.
But I will tell you, I was absolutely blown away by a couple of the commercials. We talked about one earlier, which is the QR code commercial. But the one that really captured my imagination and really convinced me that the Willing to Win conversation is alive and well, and that people are actually taking positions about the future right now, is a commercial that really was something that it really showed the spirit of Willing to Win. I don't want to give too much away. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the commercial, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Space, the boundary of human achievement, the new frontier.
It's not time to escape. It's time to engage. It's time to plant more trees. It's time time to build more trust. Time to make more space for all of us. So while the others look to the metaverse and Mars, let's stay here and restore ours. Yeah, it's time to blaze our trail. Because the new frontier, it ain't rocket science. It's right here.
So truly the nuance that might be missed on a lot of people was something that you figured out.
Well, yeah, no, the thing is, I mean, I was so excited. I was up recording this commercial before I even found out who, was the commercial was for. Yeah, for who it was for. It was for Salesforce, which is a great organization. We do work with them. We love them as a company. But I had no idea that they were so keyed in to the Willing to Win conversation. And in the commercial, they're literally taking a jab at some other folks that are leaders in the world right now. They say, while other people are thinking about, the metaverse, I don't know who that could be, Meta, right? And other people are thinking about Mars. I don't know who that could be. I mean, he was driving a Tesla when he was thinking about going to Mars, right? We're going to stay right here on the ground. And they're thinking practical and tactical. And really what they're saying is we need tools to help us live our life right here while we dream big. And I just thought it was such a great commercial. It was such an inspirational message, especially for those of us that are a part of the Willing to Win Legion. Because when you think about it, change is so impactful, and our environment can change, in a heartbeat. We can start a day one way, and then something will happen during that day, and the next day is an entirely new world, right? So if you think about it, it's the difference between the day before Pearl Harbor and the day after Pearl Harbor. It's the difference between the day before John Kennedy's assassination and the day after. And for our generation, I think it is definitely best, described as the difference between September 11th and September 12th, because the world that followed wasn't something we had imagined. We couldn't even really imagine it on the 12th, and then that change just kept happening and happening. And since then, we've lived in a fundamentally different world.
And you talked about it in From the Edge, right? How we then collectively as a tribe came together. So sometimes out of tragedy is born this sense of community that maybe some had never experienced up to that point. And I mean, I'll never forget how you did call, care, and show concern for loved ones, and then sort of all the connectedness of who was impacted by 9/11. So that speaks, the connectedness speaks directly to what you were saying about that Salesforce commercial. If change means that somehow you're going to have this larger than life, space community, I may not be able to relate to that. So I feel left behind. Yet in the case of this Team Earth, we're all one team, we're all grounded, we're right here. I'm a part of that. You didn't leave me behind when you changed. I can join with you and do things right here together on Earth. So I think that's maybe what we're losing sometimes, is people being left behind.
Absolutely. And I love what you said. I think we're going to use that going forward, because, if you see somebody that's in need, and we have these big events, we know naturally, we're very tribal. We know naturally to what we need to do to comfort other people. We're going through the same thing. But I think the real challenge is when the change isn't for everybody all at once. The change is something that I'm going through, or you're going through, your family's going through, your community, and I may not be in that community. And really, as long as we try to be aware and, call, care, and stay connected. I absolutely,
yes.
I love that. That's a great rule to live by, because there's a lot of change going on. Our correspondent, Alyssa Nolte, has been doing a light look at social media and some of the changes that are going on in the workforce right now. So let's go to her with Social Light.
Socialite.
You might have heard about the Great Resignation. And a lot of people are trying to understand what is causing this phenomenon. Why are people leaving their jobs in droves? People are saying, is it toxic culture? Is it high levels of innovation, new opportunities? Is it failure to recognize performance? Is it pay? Is it hierarchy? Well, there's one reason that we're looking at, and it's the ability to work from home and have success from anywhere. We found a clip of a comedian who's talking about how her performance is still great, and yet she's still being expected to come back into the office. Take a look.
You will be expected to be back in the office at the start of the month. I was hoping we could discuss a longer-term remote solution or even a hybrid. I'm not open to having that discussion. Has my performance been lacking since working from home? No, you hit all your targets and deliverables. Have I not been available or as much of a team player? You're an incredibly valuable part of this team. And I still need to return to the office full-time? Yes, that is correct. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your loss. Sorry, what loss? Me. Toodaloo.
That's what's so crazy, because the way things are changing, how the experience of work is changing, she was still meeting all of the job expectations. She just wasn't always going to be physically there in person.
Right, and it's not just what we think of as traditional, work from home jobs, like a white collar job. I read an article a couple of days ago that 78% of teachers would not recommend their profession to anyone else.
Wow.
Could you imagine? 78% of people don't want anyone else to become a teacher.
Go figure. You don't, pay them very well. You don't respect them very much, and you constantly have an issue and strikes because you're not meeting their needs, and they don't want to recommend the job to somebody. How ungrateful! No, of course,
right?
Of course they're going to feel that way, and it's just such a shame.
The experience for many teachers is not what it used to be, nor is it the reason that they got into the profession.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will tell you that young lady may be a comedian, but she speaks truth. That was a great video.
Yeah, she does a great job.
And when we were talking about the grocery changes and the habits, that reminded us of a very personal example in your house.
So I have to tell you, when you guys were talking about grocery delivery, even before the pandemic hit, I was a big user of having those groceries delivered. I don't love to go to the store, so my kids have never really been to the grocery store, and they're pretty little, they're elementary school age, and Charlotte is 2, and for her second birthday, she got a toy shopping cart, and very excited about it. We realized quickly, though, that she had actually never seen one of those in real life, because she started using it. Not only was she pushing from the wrong end, she was using it as a stroller for her dollies. So she had packed up all of her dollies, and despite a fully stocked toy kitchen with all of the food and plastic food you could imagine, not one of that plastic food went into the toy shopping cart. It was exclusively a stroller for her dollies.
Great.
So it was just really funny to see a kid who has never actually been in a grocery store.
Right, just like he was saying how times have changed
That's
dramatically.
it. For Christmas, your kid is getting a rotary phone, and we're going to see what the heck she does with that.
Liam, that's the funny thing about kids these days. If I asked you to make a phone with your hand, what kind of shape would you make? Right?
Yes.
If you ask my 6-year-old, Liam does this. He makes a smartphone shape. He doesn't do this like kids these days.
Oh my gosh, Willing to Win is starting to get me. It's starting to happen to me.
I know, it blew my mind when I said, Liam, make a phone, and he goes,
wow.
I was blown away.
That is so bizarre.
Funny. So tell us about what's to come as we wrap up this season 3.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I can't believe that we're already through this episode. This is the mini season, having sort of examined change from every angle. I think it's been really productive, and I think we're really starting to tease out what the Willing to Win conversation is and how it's really affecting everyday people, which is what it's all about. But coming up next, we're going to have a Willing to Win mini season focused on leadership. And this isn't leadership from some academic book. This is about leadership in your own life. We're going to examine the concept of leadership, what it means to lead your own life, what it means to lead your family, what it means to be a member or a leader of your community or the organization in which you work. And we're going to give you practical and tactical tools to not only make your personal life better, but also to improve and dramatically accelerate the pace and trajectory of your career by being a leader at work. And we so look forward to having you with us. Thanks so much for being a part of Willing to Win for this and every episode. On behalf of Willing to Win, I'm Jeff Kaplan.
I'm Tara Thomas Getman, and thanks to our correspondent, Alyssa Nolte. Go to willingtowin.org, willing2win.org, so you can check out this episode and more and be part of the Legion conversation.
Socialize!
Willing to Win is produced by Lift Productions. Guests on the program are not compensated, nor is their appearance representative of the Willing to Win views. Willing to Win does not necessarily endorse any people, products, or services.